Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, Week 11 preview. Now, I want you to know, 1, I apologize for this being late. 2, I ran cross-country, almost literally in the span of 3 days. I crossed the entire country, New York to California, in 3 days so that I could get here tonight to record the week preview, this being Sunday night.
And it won't even be worth it.
Even though it's a little bit late, it was. Hopefully it's worth it. I don't know if it is.
But we'll see, won't we?
Just put me on the spot like that. Why don't you? Okay, so we're going to start off, obviously, with the week preview, as always. So you take us into the week preview, and I've been out of the loop because I've been in a car forever. I listened to a lot of hockey on the radio, which was weird. I haven't listened to hockey on the radio in a long time, so that was kind of fun. But I don't know what's going on in the hockey world. So this is actually, I know one thing, but there's some stuff I don't know. So this is actually a good time for you to catch me up a little bit.
Jim Montgomery and Peter DeBoer got fired in the same week.
Finally.
After
How long have you been calling for that?
Well, not for the reasons I thought. Unprofessional conduct. I've been looking around. I haven't seen too much in detail about that. I'm sure somebody's leaked it somewhere, but I haven't been able to find it in my brief searching of what that actually means. But yeah, he's gone. However, Sagan
I don't think they've announced what it was.
Yeah, I don't know if they did, but they said it wasn't related to like the new mandates from the NHL about like abuse and all that. It wasn't abuse related, I guess, but who knows?
The only rumor I saw about it was that it was related. There was a rumor going around that someone that knew him or something like that, like one of those kind of under the table rumors, but that kind of seem a little bit real, is apparently it had something to do with drinking. Mm-hmm. I don't know how true that is, but well, I guess we'll find out eventually.
Yeah. It seems like the players really liked him. I guess I got the wrong impression after the whole thing last season, but that was really Lights that was kind of doing it mostly. But calling out and little bit unprofessional about how they put Ben and Sagan on the spot last season. But Sagan apparently really likes Jim Montgomery and was like surprised by this or whatever. But who knows? And DeBoer also got fired.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean,
they fired everybody in San Jose. The goalie coach is gone. The assistant coach is gone. The head coach is gone. They fired everyone.
Yeah, I mean, the team was kind of a mess. It probably still is kind of a mess.
Just a little bit.
But there's only so much you can do
honestly,
to make
a lot of it,
Martin Jones play well. So we'll see about that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm curious to see if they're in on Georgiev, for example, this year from New York, because he's playing fantastic. They need a goaltender. They may look at him. I don't know. There's a few goaltenders I would think that are on the market this trade deadline. So I'm curious to see where some of these guys go.
Yeah. I wonder, I guess they why would they at this point? But I would say Francouz would be in that, but they're not going to trade him.
I mean,
not this often.
It probably depends on where they are from a playoff perspective.
They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to trade him. It just wouldn't be worth it unless they got some crazy return.
Speaking of trades, apparently Arizona is the favorite to land Taylor Hall. And all I've got to say about that is yikes.
Hate that more than any other team.
Yeah. I think that is probably, aside from Detroit, that is probably
I would rather him go
worst
to Detroit.
Team.
I just think, like, if you put Hall, Larkin, Mantha together, that's a pretty solid line. You can put Hall with Kessel or Keller or somebody, but there's like the center doesn't exist yet. Like they don't have a number one center, really. I mean, you could kind of say it's Barrett Hayton, but like you're basically putting Hall back in the situation he was in when he joined the Devils with like, oh, we're gonna get Nico Hischier, he's gonna be the friggin' best, and you're gonna be the best now, and everybody's gonna get all these points, and you're gonna be an MVP, and he was, and then it didn't matter.
You really don't like Nico Hischier.
It's not. I mean, I guess I'm giving him a little bit of a bad rap here, but it's just Hall has managed to play on bad teams his entire career, and I'm not saying that. Well, I guess I kind of alluded that Arizona's bad, but I basically mean offensively not gifted for his entire career. And if he goes to Arizona, he's going to be in a system that's not really going to, at least from a fantasy perspective. I mean, it might be a good move for him as like a person, but for us in fantasy, it's bad news. And as him,
Yeah,
he's got
for fantasy,
he
I
has
can't
to
imagine
think.
anything worse.
Like I don't think the Yotes would trade for him if it's a rental. It just doesn't make any sense. They're not really in win now mode. So you got to assume if they're trading for him, it has to do with an extension that's being promised. And that means that Hall has to be cool with it because he's not going to agree to an extension if he doesn't want to be somewhere. So if Yotes are the front runner, it has to mean an extension. And it has to mean that Hall is getting ready to not really be a contender for a while again, which is weird.
Yeah, I don't know what he's thinking. It comes down to what he wants. Does he want money or does he want to compete? I think that's the question. Arizona can give him money, I'm pretty sure, and he'd fit in perfectly to what they're building. But the issue is you're probably not going to win as much as somewhere like Colorado, right?
Yep.
So and I think a lot of it's what I'm more interested in is something that we talked about offline, which is he going to sign right when the trade happens? And I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm very curious to see what Hall fetches.
Yeah, I wonder. probably good, pretty good penny.
I mean, in the past, so we've seen Mark Stone go in the past few years. I'm trying to think of the other high profile names, but I am blanking after driving so much. But almost every high profile name that has gone recently, if we think back to Erik Karlsson, for example, those trades, almost all of them included some form of a first round pick and a high-end prospect. So I'm imagining that that's probably what they're going to have to give. Now, I am curious if there's some kind of goaltender situation there that they might be able to work out because they don't have any goaltenders in New Jersey. So there might be something there, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think we'll see a first and some kind of prospect go over.
Yeah, probably. Didn't Stone not? They didn't get a first for Stone, right? They got Brandstrom, a second, and Oscar Lindbergh or something like that. Was that it? I can't remember. But I mean, that was technically a rental, but of course, it was the same kind of deal where like it was agreed upon that he was going to be signing an extension, probably. Anyway, Oscar Lindblom. He was diagnosed with Ewing's sarcoma. I had no idea it was a thing, but it's a form of cancer that affects like bone and soft tissue, which I mean, I don't even know what to say. Just hoping he makes it through this. He's only 23. It's crazy for him to be in that situation. But it just makes me like the fact that he's able to get such good, medical like attention. I don't know that like a normal person would have been able to be diagnosed with something like this without, being monitored the way that athletes are. So maybe it's a bit of a blessing and a curse that he has to miss the season, but at least they're aware of this. I actually don't even know how what the recovery is like, but the fact that he's out for the season means this is something that's going to be pretty serious.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope he gets better. This is way, way above hockey. Like it kind of reminds me of Phil Kessel back when he had cancer. Although this is, of course, a much rarer form, and he's way younger. So, all the best to Oscar Lindblom. I mean, he was having a hell of a year too.
Yeah, he was. It actually says this type is most common in teens and young adults, which is pretty weird, but
interesting.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he gets better. There's not much else I can say except that, like the rest of everybody in the hockey community, we're fighting with Lindblom as much as we can. All right. And with that, how would I move us into the injury report, which I guess you could start with Lindblom, but out for season. Then we've got Calvin DeHaan, who's got a shoulder injury. They haven't really given us a timeline on that yet, but longer term, seems like. Cale Makar is day-to-day / IR. I mean, they just put him on the IR, so I don't really know how much longer he's going to be on there, but he's got an upper body injury. Josh Anderson, remember him? I feel like in banger leagues, he was such a name to start the season and just hasn't really mattered. Day-to-day with an upper body injury. Travis Konechny is out indefinitely with a concussion. Tyler Johnson is day-to-day with a lower body injury. Nikita Kucherov is day-to-day with a lower body injury. Tyson Barrie is day-to-day with an ankle injury, which is supposed to be short-term. And then that's kind of it for the outgoing players. And then we got some coming back. John Klingberg has returned. Anthony Mantha has returned, although not on top line yet. Rasmus Dahlin has returned. Nazem Kadri, Patrice Bergeron, Nicholas Backstrom have all returned. And then we've got Zach Cassian and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins rounding it out of the players that came back this week. So of the ones that were reported anyway, by the crappy list that I use. But yeah, so a fairly light injury report this week.
And let's move in now to drop candidates. So my first one here is going to be a New York Ranger. Now, I also have a bunch of New York Rangers for short-term targets because they have a great schedule this week. But as you know, the situation in New York changes constantly. You never know who's going to be top power play game to game. You never know who's going to be top line. It just feels like everything is constantly shifting. And so you have to be really alert. When you pick up a Ranger player, you are virtually saying, I am down to monitor daily faceoff or whatever line place you use every single day to see where a player stacks up. Because you just never know. They could go from relevant to irrelevant in the span of 2 periods, pretty much. Everything changes so quickly over there. And that lends itself to Adam Fox. 35% owned defenseman. Minutes are down to around 16, even a little bit less, and just not really doing much anymore. I love his play, and if you watch him, he passes the eye test. He looks really good. But from a deployment standpoint, it's just not there right now. And I would assume, or at least advise, that he can very much safely be dropped at the moment.
Yep. My first one, I feel like, has been on this list a few times now, but the fact that he's still 70% means not a lot of people are listening yet, and that's PK Subban. I get with Nasreddine taking over that you may have been holding out a little bit. I actually was, once I saw Hines get let go, I was like, oh, maybe we'll, catch a break here and he'll get another shot at top power play and maybe something will happen, blah, 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 blah. What has happened instead is Hall has been scratched for 2 games because they don't want him to get hurt right before this trade, which must be happening before the 19th, right? 19th being Thursday. That's roster lock. So you'd think that that trade will be happening before then, whatever it is, for them to be scratching Hall already. But Nasreddine took over. Subban still didn't get top power play, and now Hall's gone, basically. So there's no fun. There's no fun in Jersey.
That applies to real life, right? Too. I don't think that's only hockey.
It depends on your definition of fun.
That is very fair. Okay, moving on to my next one here. I have a center from Boston, David Krejci, 42% owned. Now, granted, at the time of recording this, he did drop 15% overnight. And so he has gone down a lot, but still 42% is way too high with Bergeron back. Even in a points-only league, he's really only worth it when Boston has a good schedule. At the moment, he's just not worth it to me. I know he just had a big game too, but that doesn't matter in my opinion. I think David Krejci, although I'm high on him rest of season, he is also a streaky player and relies on injuries and opportunities to arise. And in this situation right now, he just doesn't really have any opportunities. And there's other centers out there that I like more than David Krejci, especially given that David Krejci gets you no peripherals either. He's a black hole aside from when he's getting points.
Yep, I agree. My next one here is Andrei Burakovsky, left wing, right wing, 48%. I think I would drop him after Wednesday because he plays Monday, Wednesday, which is a nice little start of the week. But he's still playing top line, which seems interesting, except for the fact that he only played 13 minutes in his last game and his ice time is just dipping. I think that top line is going to disappear for him real soon here. I think we're going to go right back to the Landeskog, Rantanen, McKinnon line that we all expect. And at that point, I think Donskoy and Burakovsky are pretty much toast. They're both already dropping minutes with the return of Landeskog and Rantanen, even if they are on that top line, if you want to call it that. No more power play one for either one of them either, unsurprisingly, with Kadri returning.
And my last one here is going to be Rope Hintz. Center left wing, 37% owned. Minutes are down to around 14, 15. It seems like that whole line, he's on a line with Pavelski. It seems like that line in general is only being used around 15 minutes. They're stacking the top line again with Tyler Stake and Jamie Benn and Alexander Radulov. And so right now, I don't like Hintz's deployment at all. And the other thing that I don't like is that his peripherals have kind of gone down quite a bit. So you also don't even get any kind of peripherals. And so, in my opinion, Rope Hintz at 37% is too highly owned. I'd much rather have a Joel Armia, for example. I know they're not the same positions, but I'd much rather have a Joel Armia, maybe even a Blake Coleman if you have peripherals. And if you're holding Rope Hintz for just a points perspective, it's definitely not worth it.
He's actually, I'll preview this. He's on my short-term targets, actually, because Dallas just has the right schedule for him this week. But
they have the right schedule. I struggled with the same thing. I thought about, should I put him on short-term targets or put him on drop candidates. And I decided on drop candidates just because he hasn't been doing anything. Even
Yeah.
with the schedule, I can't advise him simply because he hasn't been doing anything. Granted, the schedule is nice, especially if you have less ads, right? If you only have, let's say, 2 ads for the week or 1 ad for the week, he's a good one. But if you can maximize your starts, if you have 4 ads for the week, for example, you can do one that's for Monday and Wednesday, and then one for Friday, Sunday. You can mix and match, and you'll actually get more off night starts than Rope Hints, and I think you'd actually get way more value than Rope Hints. That's the reason I left him on drop candidates instead of short term.
Fair enough. My last one is Kyle Palmieri. I'm just picking on the Devils, who also has 2 off nights early on. But the fact that he's 69% is the thing that's weird to me. He's kind of done his Kyle Palmieri thing where he comes out like bottled lightning, basically. And then he just starts to cool off. And he's right there in cool off period. 20 points at 32 games is nothing amazing. His shots are whatever. They're like lower than his norm. And he's still buoyed by this high shooting percentage, which he gets at the beginning of every season for some reason. I don't know why he does this, but every single beginning of the season, it has this inflated shooting percentage, and then it levels back out to his career average. So he's just doing that, and now he's losing, the best player on the team. Taylor Hall doesn't have him on the wing anymore, and I don't know. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be hard to recommend pretty much anybody on the Devils after Hall leaves. Like the only one that comes to mind will actually show up on my long term again. You probably already know who it is.
Ooh,
but
I probably do.
We'll get there.
Huh. Okay. Well, you know what? I was going to make a little quip there. I do own Kyle Palmieri, by the way, and I'm not dropping. I like him, especially in a PIMS league, because we have PIMS in our league. He's actually way more valuable there. But yeah,
he's racking up
I'm
this
not
season.
dropping him anytime soon.
I don't know why, because it's not normal for him.
They suck. What else is he supposed to do?
Take roughing penalties?
I guess. Okay, let's move into long-term targets now. And my first one is going to be Neil Pionk, Winnipeg defenseman, 56% owned. I was actually shocked that he was this low. I missed out on him by just like an hour in one of my leagues, and that was the last league he was available in. He's playing top power play in Winnipeg, and they have a really good top power play again. So they're doing Wheeler, Connor, Scheifele, Laine, and Pionk. That is definitely the power play you want to be on in Winnipeg. And Neil Pionk currently hasn't. He's running away with it and been playing really, really well and actually getting some decent peripherals too. So the Neil Pionk hype for me is right back on. And again, I was shocked he was 56% owned. It's tough to think of a league in which Neil Pionk shouldn't be owned right now, given his deployment and how good he's been over the last 14 days.
Yeah, I agree for sure. My first one is Alex Killorn for now. Anyway, left wing, right wing, 37%. Playing with Stamkos, it's kind of on a line. I don't know. It's not the top line really, but getting a lot of minutes, and he's playing not top line, but he's playing a line with Stamkos and then also on the top power play. So as long as he keeps his deployment, he's going to be worth hanging on to. It's just like a matter of how long this lasts. I don't think it's going to be a rest of season type thing, but it's working. So I don't think they're going to change it anytime soon.
Yeah, I picked up Killorn in 2 leagues. Especially more than anything, I picked him up at the time just because he was hot. And I thought, you know what? Well, if he keeps it up, then cool. If he doesn't, whatever, I drop him. But more than anything, too, I really like the left wing, right wing. And the minutes being so high right now, I love. And he's been shooting more, which is great. Okay, my next one here is going to be Ben Chirot on Montreal. Defenseman, 23% owned. All the Bengals. And he's playing lots of minutes. He's a great guy if you want, right now, he's a great option if you want a little bit of point upside, but you're not expecting it. And more than anything, what you'd be expecting with him is that you're going to get good peripherals night in and night out.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been that guy for a while this season, but he's really been turning it up to 11 lately. My next one, I left him on here from last week. And the reason I don't usually do this, but the reason I did is because last week, he was 10%, and this week he's 9%. So I'm just mad about it, I guess. But Sami Vatanen, defense 9%. He's the only like longish term guy on the Devils that I like, and that's just because even when he's not getting points, he's putting up pretty good peripherals, especially for him. He's top power play, so if anybody's going to be getting power play points, it's probably him to some extent. And he's been, relatively successful. He's not a guy that's going to be your like second or first defenseman or something. But to be a fourth or maybe fifth, depending on your league depth, you could do worse for sure.
Yeah, I picked up Vatanen in a few leagues too. I like him a lot. Especially, I picked him up as my fifth or sixth defenseman, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a fan of that. My last one here is going to be from Columbus, who actually plays 4 games this week, so it's a pretty good time to pick him up. That's going to be Oliver Bjorkstrand. Now, he doesn't have the points to back up my suggestion here. He's 10% owned, but he's played 20 plus minutes in 2 straight games, and he shoots so much. And the points are just eluding him at the moment, in my opinion. He's a great option in a deeper league and perhaps keeper league where you just don't really have that many options, and someone with a lot of upside. In my opinion, Oliver Bjorkstrand, with the minutes he's getting right now and how much he's shooting, is a very high upside guy, where if these shots start going into the net, you're going to see a lot of success. And so I really like Oliver Bjorkstrand as a potential get in before he gets hot sort of thing, because I do think he can figure it out here at some point. And when he does, I think he could absolutely go off, especially given what we've seen from him in the past and the type of player that he is. He's a sniper, and we know he can get points. Right now, they're just kind of eluding him. So again, I know that the production isn't there. So this is more so for a team that it has a very deep roster set up and perhaps just needs someone to gamble on for the week that could potentially be long-term. And that's Oliver Bjorkstrand for me.
This is a total aside because he's 62% owned, so I'm not really calling him a pickup candidate, and I don't really know that I think of him as a long-term candidate, but that reverse jinx for calling Shea Theodore sustainably low worked. 5 points in his last 2 games. How about that? Anyway.
Look at that. He listened.
Maybe
he listens to the podcast.
Maybe he does. Maybe he knew that we were tired of it. My last one here is Linus Ullmark, 30% Buffalo. I mean, this again is more of a desperation thing than somebody I would consider as like to have a good rest of season. I just think for him to be 30% owned seems kind of weird to me, considering some of the other higher owned players. It looks like he's going to get majority starts. He's playing reasonably well. Yeah, he's fine. He's an option. I feel like he hasn't been viewed as an option yet because of, Hutton started, was the starter at the beginning of the season. Then they were kind of time sharing, but now it's fully switched. And Ullmark is like pretty much officially the starter. So if you're looking for, a volume guy, especially if you're in a saves league, then Ullmark should be, I feel like he should be higher than 30% at this point, but what do I know?
Okay, and now moving into the week preview. So teams with 4 or more games are going to be Dallas, Edmonton, Colorado, Anaheim, Columbus, Nashville, and Ottawa. And teams with 2 or less games, none. Every team plays at least 3 games, which is both a good and bad thing. And for teams that play 3 or more off nights, there's only 3 teams that play 3 off nights. And that's going to be Dallas, Edmonton, and the New York Rangers. Knowing that, the first short-term target should be pretty obvious. And that's Zach Kassian. Right wing, 47% owned. I'm actually surprised that he's this highly owned. I don't know why I'm that surprised about it, but I am. Given that other guys have been struggling to get up there. You have like a Sami Vatanen who can't gain, or Anthony Duclair who's taken forever, and yet Zach Kassian 47% owned. It's insane. But really solid minutes since coming back, 3 points in 4 games. Because of the 3 off nights, I mean, he's a solid pickup.
Yep, I agree with that one. I already mentioned one of them, Rope Hint, so I'm just going to go ahead and skip past him. Rupe, I don't know. And then Jacob Silverberg is my next one. Left wing, right wing, 28%. He's been better lately, but he plays Wednesday, Sunday, so he's got at least 2 off nights, and those off nights are against the Devils and the Rangers. So that's pretty decent. He also has his other games are against the Islanders on Saturday. I would probably assume you bench him then, but if you can play him on Tuesday against the Flyers, it's a decent start as well. So, and Tuesday's not that heavy. Tuesday and Thursday, I mean, they are kind of heavy. Thursday's not that heavy, actually, but 11 and 10 games respectively between Tuesday and Thursday. But you might be able to fit. You might not have to bench on those days if you're lucky.
I have 2 Rangers here, and I'm just going to go through both of them. It's Chris Kreider, left wing, 45% owned, and Capo Caco, right wing, 42% owned. Again, picking up Rangers, you never know where they're going to end up by the end of the week, right? So it's a little dangerous to pick them up for off nights because you don't know whether for the off nights they're actually going to be in the position that you're picking them up for, right? Like I did that a few weeks ago where I picked up Capo Caco for the off nights, and then Capo Caco played on top line for 1 game and then was down on the third for the next 3 games. So it's tough. for example, Chris Kreider got demoted to the fourth line mid-game last game, but he's a good option. He was getting a lot of good minutes before that, was playing really well. Again, it's just the Quinn blender. You don't know what's going to happen. And Capo Caco's actually been playing some really consistent minutes for the past few games. Not so much the deployment is super consistent, but the minutes are consistent at around 18 and 19. And he's shooting way, way more. Actually, a 10-shot game the other day. So Capo Caco has been looking a lot better. And I'm actually surprised as well that Capo Caco is 42% owned. And Chris Kreider is 45% owned. And we still have, like I said, Armias and whatnot that haven't gotten above. So both of those, though, are good options for the off nights this coming week.
Yeah, I had Caco on my list as well. My last, well, I've got a pair here. My last ones are Frank Vetrano and Brett Connolly, both 18%. This is Florida also plays 2 off nights, so I found it pretty difficult to find decent pickups this week. But Vetrano and Connolly are both playing alongside Barkov for the time being. I don't know if that's going to stick or not, but they're going to get their first game against Ottawa, which will be a nice test. And them both being that low owned is a nice little benefit. I actually think Vetrano is probably the better pickup. They're both 18%. They're both left wing, right wing. But Vetrano, I think, is the one that's more likely to get points, and he shoots more typically. But Connolly is going to be the guy that's going to get more hits. So if you're looking for a little something different, I guess those guys are both options.